If I could go back in time and give myself one piece of advice when I was learning guitar, it'd be to never trust your junior high friends because they're going to sell you out for a woman the first chance they get. But if I could give myself two pieces of advice, it would be to stop worrying less about this, and that is going to be getting perfect tone out of every single string when I'm trying to make bar chords. I remember when I was first trying to learn songs, I would always see these chord charts and everything, right? Everybody kind of remembers jumping into an F major for the first time and being like, how am I supposed to play an F major? And I think we do a huge disservice when we're talking about like maybe teaching or learning as far as how we start to approach certain types of chords at first, okay? I remember seeing chord charts and like, let's take, for example, this D major chord, right? A string rooted major chord. I practiced so long and so hard before I had any grasp or understanding of how to navigate through the fretboard because I was really trying to get perfect tone out of an A string rooted bar chord. And all right, let's listen to this real quick. You hear that high E string? You hear that perfect tone? Because I'm giving that little raised ring finger bar chord. You know who cared about that? Nobody cares about that. Amy didn't care in 8th grade. She sure as heck cared about Marco, who had a driver's license and had a car apparently, which actually isn't cool in your 8th grade because that means you failed at least 2 or 3 years. But I'm not bitter. However, I did spend a lot of time practicing this stupid bar chord and all the bar chords essentially, specifically the E string rooted minor ones, which are really, really hard when you first start out. And then eventually, I really just got into like Jimi Hendrix music, and I would kind of see Jimi Hendrix like play stuff live, and he would never ever use bar chords, right? And in fact, a lot of my favorite guitar players never used bar chords, but for whatever reason, the way that I taught myself, I had it in my mind that major and minor chords had to be bar chords all the time, and I had to get perfect tone out of each one of those, right? So I'll see this with a lot of my students where like they're really trying to focus on maybe playing like a F major chord or a B minor chord, and they're getting like kind of that sound, right? That everybody hears when they're first starting out. But guess what? Don't care about that. Skip it. It doesn't matter. Eventually, your hands are going to become strong enough, and you're going to be more familiar with like cramming your hand into weird shapes that it's not going to be an issue. What you should start thinking about earlier is how there are different chord voicings and different ways to play each thing, right? So I want to take a little bit of time today to talk about maybe just some stuff that I wish I would have really spent more time on earlier, okay? And we're just going to really focus on the highest 3 strings. Now, if you just want to play an F major chord like this, that would be like the first kind of revelation that I ever had, was instead of playing a bar chord F major like this, you just skip the low E string and the high E string and just play them the 4 middle strings right here. Any major chord you can just play with this shape, right? Because then you end up being more selective. And something that is way more musical is actually maybe just aiming for the middle 4 strings or muting the lower strings and the higher strings that you don't want eventually, right? So if you had like an F to G to C progression, you could play it with this shape, which is go F, G, C like that instead of F to G. Or even worse, F, G, C with the raised bar, right? That's actually so much more difficult to do than maybe F, G, C like this, which I think is a much more realistic way to play this kind of stuff. And I've been playing professionally for a while now, and like honestly, in shows, I use this version of an E string rooted bar chord played with just the middle 4 way more. It's not even close how much more I use that to play like an A major chord here instead of like this, right? The difference is so nominal, and especially if you're playing in a band with other guitar players in it too, you're gonna want to actually never play full voiced 6 strings of bar chords because it's just gonna sound kind of like, you know, all beat up and put together. So instead of playing this A major, we're gonna kind of stick with right here and just talk about just getting the 5th fret on the high E string and the B string, and then the 6th fret on the G string, right? And we'll do this with all the chords in the People's key, no, not the People's key, the key of 2020, the key of D, right? So we have 3 major chords in the key of D. There's going to be G major, A major, and D major, right? So now this is going to be kind of like, even though these are chords that you'll see as far as like the easy open chords that you start with, I really think these higher 3-string voicings that you can move around definitely have a little bit more value as far as like movable shapes and how you can kind of get in and navigate with them, right? So again, here's the G, 3rd fret E string, 3rd fret B string, 4th fret G string, and again, notice my pick is only hitting the highest 3 strings. Now my middle finger is budging up against that D string right there, so I can't hear it. So I can kind of be a little looser with the picking, and then slide it into the A major shape right there. G, A, D. Okay? And then be able to kind of like diagnose that and play those in different places, right? Specifically that D major chord. Instead of maybe sliding all the way up here, let's go to that one that I was trying to impress Amy with right here. Instead of that raised bar chord, just get the D major, just like that. There's a chord, there's a chord, there's a chord. So much more efficient than here, here, and here. And does it sound any different? Like, yes, it sounds different. I think the difference is negligible, and these are probably more valuable for you in the long run anyways. Not that there's not value in being able to play the full bar chords, specifically when it comes to maybe like hitting like a root note to kind of like establish something. In fact, a lot of the lessons that I do here and on my Patreon, where like I go through like the very first guitar lesson you ever have, 40 to 100 lessons into it, is establishing a root note and then playing like an arpeggio off of it or something like that. But again, for beginners or any intermediate players, worry less about getting all the tone out of all 6 strings, and then maybe start thinking about a little more intention from higher voiced chords, okay? They're easier to play. They're not gonna, result in hand fatigue, which is something that, again, is really more prevalent when you're first starting out, needlessly, might I add. And there's all sorts of cool stuff that you can do, right? So let's talk about, again, just going from that G to an A to a D. And again, I'm thinking of the root note just being on the E string. So 3 to 5 to 10. Again, you can think of it as 3, 5, 10, here, here, and here, 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 and here. Let's slide into this and then kind of make a little riff out of just these notes in the chord and around them, right? So we're going to slide into the major 3rd of this G chord, right? And then we're going to go just like that. That's why I use your middle finger, because you can actually pivot off of the bar chord shape. Because, again, the thing that I am glad about bar chords, one of the best reasons to learn them, is to be able to see them in your mind more so than actually playing them, right? And even if you've seen like any guitar legend and like their tabs of stuff, you'll see where the bar chord shape is, but again, very rarely are they actually playing all 6 strings of that shape. Maybe they're kind of like, maybe jumping around within that shape. So again, the shape is very important in your mind's eye. It's probably the most important shape in all of guitar playing, but you don't have to play the whole thing and get tone out of all 6 strings. I'm just going to keep repeating it over and over again until it really hammers home, right? Just like I kept repeating my love for Amy, but I never saw that one through. Thanks a lot, Marco. So right there, middle finger, then 3, 5, 3 E, and then back. Right? It's like little riff, little Van Morrison. Right? We can do a lot from just that one spot, and it all comes from that chord. Move the whole thing. A great way to drill this is to think of these 3 spots. Again, fret-wise, 3, 5 to 10, 3, 5, 10, and then maybe okay, so those are just the major chords. The minor ones are even easier, right? B minor is that one that everybody hates at first because it's that same bar chord shape where they try to trick you. Be like, I've seen this shape before. Now you're just making me start on the A string instead of the first fret on the E string, right? Yeah, I'm too smart for that. Guess what? There it is. It's as easy as possible. The 7th fret on the G, B, and E string. There's your B minor chord right there. And then if you really want to get crazy, wrap that thumb around. Again, I'm famously not a thumb player. There's something just... Why do I hate playing notes with my thumb around it? It just seems wrong to me. In fact, I'm going out on a limb. All you thumb players, you're doing it wrong. I'll just go ahead and say it. Jimi Hendrix, whatever, John Mayer, no, you're all wrong. You're just doing it wrong. Unholy. Play like a real guitar player. So again, I'm just pinching these top 3 strings. And again, whatever note this is in the high E string, that's your minor chord, right? And you can do the same thing like... I kind of like that kind of move right there where it's... You slide in to the 7th fret of the G string, and then get the B string, and then 3 frets higher. Very pentatonic-y, dare I say, right? So slide. And that's kind of like every minor chord. You can do it on the F sharp. Do an open E. And then just go through all of them, right? And then end up on D. That is so much easier, and anybody at any skill level can really start kind of playing these little pieces of chords. Again, like I can't stress enough, playing rhythm guitar for like literally hundreds and hundreds of shows, it's so much more about how you play a certain chord and which strings you're selectively hitting. Even if I'm just like vamping on like an A major chord or something like that, my hand is in a bar chord position, like no doubt about it, right? But I'm probably never actually getting all 6 strings down. I'm kind of selectively like, it's almost impossible to really see like where the pressure points are. But for the root note, holding down the E string, and then I kind of shift my weight to the back of like the meaty part of my pointer finger. Right? And there's like a lot that goes into it, but I'm never really getting that death grip that I very clearly remember trying to make myself do, where I could get that B string to have tone within there. Or if it's an A minor, having the G string to be able to be heard and not like that, right? So again, the shapes are important. I'm sure there's probably going to be like a ton of comments like, what is this guy's an idiot, this is super important. No, I think the shapes are important, but really killing your hands and killing yourself and getting down on yourself and thinking Amy's never going to love you and it'll just be unrequited forever and you'll die alone, that's not going to happen. Well, that might happen, but that's not going to be because of the bar chords and the tone that you're getting or not getting from them. So anyways, that's just some wisdom that I've learned in all my years that I wanted to pass along. And if you enjoyed it, consider the Patreon, because it keeps the lights on around here, and it keeps me busy enough to not think of what could have been in 8th grade. Thanks so much for watching.